Hello, this is Stephanie Martin with the Surrendered Life Show, and today I am interviewing an inspiring guest, Ann B. Say. And Ann helps people make sense of yesterday, see clearly today, and catch vision for tomorrow. You can connect with her on annbsay.com, and she is going to be launching her first podcast on November 1st. So be sure to connect with her so you don't miss it, because I know it's going to be good. And without further delay, here is Ann. All right, welcome to the Surrendered Life Show. Ann, I am so honored to have you on with us. And I did a brief introduction about who you are already, but I would love to hear directly from you. Tell us who you serve, what you do, and why you got into doing what you do today.
Best questions ever, Stephanie. Yeah, I'm actually a retired special ed teacher. Before that, I was an office manager, so I kind of have this mixed bag of skills. And in retirement, I pull all that stuff together, and I get to be an author, speaker, and a coach. So I'm a bit of a relational entrepreneur. And I do this because what I share with my clients are the steps that I walk through in order to find freedom to discover who I am, what I was created to do, what I believe the call on my life is. So we have a whole package, and then we have some little slice coaching packages that address things like practicing positive self-talk and daring to dream into your life. And so if I had to describe myself, I would say I'm like a ballerina. Do I look like a ballerina?
Very
I'm
beautiful
like,
and graceful.
well, there you go. So there's like a flow of grace to my life. And, you know, people will first say, oh, you're so tender-hearted and kind. And I am those things, and they resonate with me. But just like a ballerina, my feet show that I've earned the right to speak what I speak on. So if you don't know, like a ballerina's feet, they're pretty bruised, they're pretty banged up. They're heavily calloused from the practice, the years and years of practice, learning how to walk in that graceful flow. And so I like to say I'm like a ballerina because that's how I look on the outside. But when you look closer and you look at my feet, you can see I've got my time in.
I
So
love that analogy.
yeah, thank you. So I always hear from people that I have a nice blend of humor and honesty. And I like that because I feel like people are discouraged and defeated and they've lost their sense of purpose. And when they can look at things humorously, they can start to embrace the honesty about, yeah, you know what, I have lost my purpose. So we just come in, I say we, like my husband is he's my chauffeur, he's my accountant, he's my business partner. Sometimes he's my chef. So we share with people tips and tools for how to make sense of life and faith, how to get traction, how to not get derailed in your faith when life goes south. And we do that because I have a dream, Stephanie. I have a dream of a world where most people are walking around with a strong sense of purpose, a strong sense of identity, who God created them to be, and they're living life from that place. And I believe that when the scales tip in that direction, that the evil that prevails in our world will lose its influence. It'll lose its voice. And so that's kind of my global dream.
I love that. And, you know, you said making sense of, was it life and faith? And I love the way that you phrase that. I've never heard somebody phrase it that way, but it's like, you know, it packs a punch. It really gets you to think deeper on, you know, what that means. And it starts bringing in, at least when I hear it, you know, different questions or emotions or experiences about where there may be a disconnect between your faith and your life, or what you want to see happening in your life and what is not happening in your life, and how to navigate through the life's challenges and disappointments and pain and hurts that we all encounter and endure, and keeping your faith, or standing strong in that, or what do you learn from it? I remember writing I wrote the book The Messy Middle, and I kind of sort of like, it probably is a very similar message, because I was going through my own, trying to make sense of this purpose journey that God called me on, and that it was very painful and messy and not clean, or just like not linear, and confusing, because what was getting worked out of me was honestly a deeper, stronger foundation of faith, not this what I thought faith was.
Mm.
And so I'm curious, what is that you work with people through, and how do you work with them through those life's difficult moments, and life doesn't line up to what I thought it would?
Well, first of all, the whole thing started because of my own journey. And, we have the most authority with the things that we've walked through. And, all right, so I'm going to take you back to geometry class. Are you ready?
Oh, I don't know. I might not track, but okay.
Venn diagrams. Remember Venn diagrams?
Yes.
Circles that cross over. Okay, so if you think of 3 Venn diagrams, and we can start on the outside, one represents our body, one represents our soul, and one represents our spirit. And our spirit is really the part where in your identity, it's who God says you are, like uniquely you. It's that Psalm 139, I knit you together in your mother's womb. You're uniquely and wonderfully made. So it's that type of identity. And your body represents your experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, your abilities, your skills, the things that you're really excited about doing, that you love to do. And then your soul represents things like your behavior patterns and your communication styles, and even things like your spiritual gifts, because we're talking to that part of culture. And it's interesting in a Venn diagram where they intersect. So when the spirit, when who God says you are, doesn't line up with how your soul is responding, that's really a place of inner healing. Inner healing. And in that place of inner healing, that's where we can start to understand who we are, who we were created to be, how our personality is not like flawed, but it really is ours and uniquely ours. The funny thing is, when I first started to hear God's voice, which is one of my most favorite things to talk to people about, I'd say, God, what do you think of me? Jesus, what do you think of me? And he'd say, I think you're the funniest daughter I have. Like, you crack me up. And for 2 years, that was all he would say, like, you crack me up. And I realized that what he was doing was he was healing that wound in my soul that always was saying, Anne, you just need to grow up. You just need to grow. Would you mature? And when my soul could finally get healed of that lie and line itself up with who God says I am, then I was able to just enjoy my sense of humor and enjoy my personality, and I was freer to be me. And so then when the soul intersects with the body, with our experiences and our skills and things, see, now I have to watch my chart. That's where our beliefs, I have it in my head. along with a gazillion other things like the Library of Congress. So when our soul and our body touch, they touch in a place of our belief systems. So when things happen to us, and if our soul isn't processing things from a place of identity, then we develop belief systems that don't line up with God's word, and specifically God's word about us. And I got a story there too. We'll do that another day. And when our bodies connect with our spirit, that's a place where we can manage ourselves. So you and I have a favorite author. I know we share this favorite author, Pastor Danny Silk out of California. And he's very well known for saying things like, we have to manage ourselves. On a good day, managing myself is the best I can do. And it dawned on my husband and I that you can't manage yourself until you know who you are. He's a chemist. And if he just said to me, go in the lab and create this, he's a polymer chemist, so create this polymer, I would have no idea. Like, I slept through 9th grade science and I quit science after that. I'm deeply fascinated with quantum theory right now, but I would not be able to manage something I don't understand. And so we need to be able to understand who we are in order to manage ourselves. And the coolest thing is where all those 3 circles intersect in the middle is where we find purpose and our destiny, where we dream the dreams that God dreamed for us. And so when they all are lining up and come together, that's that place that we live from. That's that place where we come alive. And I love it that in the Venn diagram, all 3 of them are important. It's kind of like an equalizer. You know, one isn't more important than the other, but you need all 3 because God created us body, soul, and spirit. And so all 3 are equally important. They just have different functions.
Mm-hmm. And this, you know, I found that some people have a hard time connecting. So they'll realize like the spiritual health, soul, like, and then they're starting to dig into the soul health. They have a hard time like understanding the body, like, and the body connection to the health of the soul. And I don't know if one, just in all honesty, me growing up in church, I hardly ever heard them talk about the body. Like certain times, like your body is a temple, but like, did they ever unpack exactly what that meant? No, maybe they would talk about, purity, or like, maybe not drinking too, like, certain type of, I hate to call it behavior modification, but like certain types of things, like your diet or whatever, but like there's so much more to that than like what at least I saw taught. Barely. I would hardly call it a teaching. More of a brush over thing, because I don't know if they were intimidated by or just not understanding, at least the American church, not wanting to touch on the mind, body, spirit. I don't know if it sounds too Eastern world, like, yeah. I don't know what the avoidance is, but like, I'm grateful to see that this is very much coming into play now, because a large part of understanding yourself and your emotions and the state of your soul and mind is also seeing how your body is handling it as well. Your body is a messenger. Your body communicates a lot, and your body also affects your mood a lot. So I know, because I'm going through some changes and dietary changes, and it is affecting my mood in a very big way. So it is very much connected. So do you get resistance from anybody? From who you work with? Is there like a confusion or a resistance with understanding the body, or are they pretty open to it?
Well, maybe they're just too nice to tell me that they're resisting. But we've been working with people for almost 4 years with this particular content, and we've walked, oh gosh, in person, 50 people through like these 10 modules, and everyone has come out the other side with a deeper understanding of, oh wow, my life makes sense. Like I get why I respond that way. To be honest, I'm just starting to be very curious about quantum theory and how it impacts the body, soul, and spirit. And my husband told me, you're not allowed to talk about that in your interview with Stephanie.
Oh, well, here we are.
He's a chemist, he's a scientist, and he's like, you don't know enough yet. But what I do know, and what even as far back as the early 1900s, the science in the science field were really understanding that there was a dynamic out there that while they couldn't control it and they didn't understand it, it did exist. And we would call that today the quantum theory, which isn't really theory, I guess it's mechanics. When we talk about our hearts and our minds, we're talking about both things. We're talking about the soul, because we're talking about emotions and thoughts, and we're talking about the body because we're talking about physical organs. And yet God created us where they're literally intertwined, and that's where this quantum stuff fascinates me.
Yeah. I'm starting to get into, which I've never been into science either, but I'm getting into like neuroscience, which is like shocking to me. But I love Dr. Caroline Leaf. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but like she gets real scientific. Sometimes I can track, sometimes I can't.
Yeah, I have to sort of get the point and then set it aside. But what she's saying is what really the neuroscience is really paralleling the quantum science. And so the heart, the physical organ, the heart, actually emits this electromagnetic field, which sets a rhythm for both the brain and the respiratory system and the other organs, but also every cell in the body. So when Dr. Caroline Leaf talks about your thoughts being toxic or healthy, literally the quantum science is saying the same thing, because it's saying that the heart, the physical organ of the heart, with the emotions of the soul, are working to set the rhythm of the physical body. And so when Solomon says, above all else, guard your heart, for from it flows the wellspring of life, like that makes a ton of sense, because whether it's healthy life or toxic life, quantum science is showing us, yeah, there's something that flows out of there. I think it's fascinating.
It is. And some people call it energy, like it's just all kinds of people are tuning into this. They're really, I mean, we can shift an atmosphere. Like we can do that. Our presence can affect, if you're in a good mood, that can positively be contagious. If you're in a not so great mood, that also can now, but we're each responsible for our own responsiveness to it. We can either be reactive or responsive, like grateful for you, Anne, that when I was all frazzled about the tech stuff earlier, you remained grounded and peaceful instead of, spiraling, because some people call that colluding with other people's energy. And this is where family systems come into play. This is where, right, we now can influence nations. Like I always wonder, why does the Bible say we can change nations or influence nations? I'm just like, that sounds like really big. But then I'm realizing now how all of this is interconnected, and how all of it is, by no means am I a master understanding of it. I'm just starting to get the revelation of how that is, because I see how a husband and wife are affected, a family unit is affected, a leader in a company is affected, and how that forms culture, and then the leader of a like, and how, but you don't always have to be somebody in charge to influence and transform cultures or families, or, and it starts with you individually, goes right down to the individual, which is why you do great work.
You know, it's interesting when we say it starts with us, and I believe exactly what you're saying. We all can influence the atmosphere. It just depends how we want to influence it. Do we want to influence it for Jesus or for
Yep.
good, for healing, for health? Or do we want to influence, you know, for destruction and division and that kind of thing? So when we think about like our behavior patterns, and you know, the stuff that makes me twitch is probably not going to be the stuff that makes somebody else twitch. But the question isn't, you know, I can't be around that person because they make me twitch. The question is, why are they making me twitch? And what is the truth? Because twitching is never fun. It makes me feel yucky, you know. Um, and it puts me in a place where I start to judge people. So if I can say, well, you know what, pushing agendas is a hot button. It makes me twitch. Deceitfulness makes me twitch. So when I start to twitch, now when I talk about managing ourselves, understanding ourselves and managing ourselves, when I start thinking, oh, geez, that person makes me crazy. Well, the next question is, well, why? Well, because I'm picking up somewhere that maybe they have a hidden agenda, or they're trying to push it, or they're being deceitful, they're not telling the truth. Well, then I can approach it from my spirit perspective, which says, well, you know, God, what do you say? How can I help them to step back into a place of honor and truth? You know what I mean? So now that I understand like what my hot buttons are, what makes me twitch, now I can manage that, and I can manage it and leverage it for good, for healing, for wholeness, instead of my own self-destruction and division within a community.
I love that. Identifying, and I share that a lot, paying attention to the triggers, you know, like what is causing this odd, you got to pay attention. It comes down to self-awareness. You've got to be aware. Like that's step number one. Like change doesn't happen, no transformation happens unless you are, number one, are aware of what's going on. So paying attention to that, and then being curious about what it is. I love that. Instead of like looking at like how they bother you and you'll just avoid them or whatever, like you're more empowered. It's really an empowered place to then dig a little bit deeper. What exactly is it that they're doing that's causing me to feel this way, think this way, react, whatever? And you can navigate through that and come from a place of love instead of self-preservation or whatever ego tries to get in there to get in the driver's seat and, you know, mess things up. And we all fall and stumble. Like we don't walk this out perfectly, but it is helpful to do this. And when I started doing it, it made a huge difference in how you approach the situation, how you interact with them. Sometimes it's appropriate that you do keep a distance if the person has no plans on changing certain behaviors. But a lot of times I found that sometimes people, if you come from that love, they'll feel that love, and it can, not always, but often diffuses walls of defensiveness. And really welcomes you into a place where they're actually really grateful that you brought it to their awareness, that you cared about and loved them enough to talk about it and help them, because I don't necessarily people believe that people wake up and want to constantly do evil, like, or, go about, I want to lie to everybody. I want to deceive everyone. I want to use everybody. Like, I don't think they wake up. Now, are there callous people? Yes. But um when God gets in there, he's soft. It's like, it's just, God is so unconditional in his love. He sees the wounds, he sees where those people are coming from, and why they're behaving the way that they are. And he empowers us as believers to help set them free and move on to a better way of living and a better way of being. And I love that. But you know what? There's a lot of believers that don't know how to do that. And so I'm glad you teach that.
Good stuff. Well, it goes back to that global dream of, if more of us were walking in identity and in purpose and really being led by our spirits rather than our souls that are still heavily wounded, then this prevailing influence of evil, and I'm talking about things like, our current hot topics like suicides and depression and infidelity in marriages. Like, if more of us were living from a place of who God created us to be, then those things wouldn't have the influence over us, because there wouldn't be so many of us emitting that type of emotion and things into the world. I'm not saying that that's the root cause. I certainly understand that there are biological reasons for a lot of that stuff. I'm not diminishing that at all. I'm just talking about the prevailing winds of that in our planet.
Yeah. So how can people connect with you? How can I learn more about you? And you mentioned your workshop, and, I'm sure somebody listening is curious about your work and may want to dig a little bit deeper with you.
Well, I am the face behind the name. So AnnBSay.com is the best way to reach me. My email, if you can't find it on the website, is just Ann@AnnBSay.com. Most everything I have is there. I have a course that you can find in there somewhere. We're getting ready to launch a new series of crafted coaching packages on just specific slices of things like practicing purpose in your life. How do we do that? Those are online small groups. Like you, I'm very passionate about small groups where we can go deeper. Because you can either go deep or you can go wide, but you can't do both at the same time.
Yeah.
So really, my website is the best place to reach out to me. I have some things that I would love to share on hearing God's voice, for yourself more clearly, ways to ignite your quiet time, your Bible study, beating boredom in Bible study.
Oh, so is the hearing God's voice, is that a worksheet, is that something that they can like opt in to get, or is it right on your website? Easy to find?
It's an opt-in gift, and it's two things. It's the PDF and the video. Okay. So if you are a person who likes to print and read, then that's right there for you. So it's both. Okay.
That's awesome. I know that people have a difficult time discerning God's voice, understanding, is this God? Is this me? Is this some other societal programming I'm coming in? So I've actually gotten asked that question, how do I know if this is God? So I think that's a great resource to share with others. And if you have asked me that, Anne has a created resource for you to go check out and grab that, because I don't have anything designed on that topic. So thank you for sharing. It was a
Awesome.
pleasure having you on, and I know that we overlap a lot in what we do and could chat and chat and chat, but I don't want to end up losing the listeners, the viewers of this. So thank you for sharing that. And that can be found at annbsay.com, correctly? Okay. And I will make sure to include that on the links below in whatever platform you are watching this. Thanks again, Ann.
Thank you, Stephanie.